Good Monday evening, everyone. It is 6:30 on a toasty afternoon and evening. Made it to 96. Felt like the triple digits. It felt just like this weekend as well. And we've got some relief in the short term. Just have to wait until Thursday until we transition the 90s to the 80s by the time we get towards the end of the work week. So a lot to talk about. We are filling in for Chief Meteorologist Bekah, who is off all week long. And we've got a lot to talk about this week. Not only are we talking toasty temperatures and, of course, heat and humidity, afternoon and evening thunderstorms, but we've got a cold front that's going to be tracking through. This is going to bring in some strong, even the potential for some severe storms to develop Wednesday night through Thursday morning. That is why we are weather impact alert as well. Now, no secret it's been hot, but in fact, we actually rank number 3 for the warmest Julys so far this month. This takes into account the average, highs, and the lows. So right now, ranked number 3 just before 1993 and 1986. The good news is if you're tired, just like me, from the heat, well, we've got some relief. Temperatures will be taking a tumble. Just have to wait towards Thursday and Friday. In the meantime, 95 is what we'll do for tomorrow afternoon, but it's very much going to be feeling like the triple digits, still hanging on to the 90s for Wednesday. And by the way, the rainfall for the greater Charlotte area doesn't really arrive until the late evening hours. So if you're in Charlotte and you're wondering why we're weather impact alert for Wednesday, well, it's actually coming more towards Wednesday night and Thursday morning. And while we do have a nice break from the heat, it's not necessarily pushes some drier air that we're all craving at this point. We are going to have continuous rain chances each and every day through the weekend. Now, we do need the rainfall, but there is going to be a concern with some localized flooding, especially as that front stalls down to the south. That means rounds and rounds of rain to look forward to over the next week. And in fact, there could be some locations, especially east of the Charlotte metro, having a chance to pick up 2 to even 4 inches. But the key here is not everyone will see the same amount of rainfall, especially further north up to the north and west of the Charlotte metro. Could see anywhere less than 2 inches. But there will be several opportunities to see this. The coverage tomorrow is just fairly minimal at best. North of the I-40 corridor, likely have the best coverage of a shower or thunderstorm. By the time we get to Wednesday, here comes that cold front late in the day, and then lingering rain chances Thursday through the weekend. Now, I have been tracking a couple of showers and thunderstorms, certainly this evening, but it's been super minimal. And what we've been kind of warning you about over the past couple of days is, well, we may only have a 30 to 40% chance each and every day. Any storm that is able to get going is in a very favorable environment to become strong and severe. So that's what we were seeing over towards Caldwell County. It was absolutely pouring. Iredell County now getting some soakers. This is mainly right alongside that I-77 corridor. So if you are driving from Statesville to Turnersburg, even over towards Eagle Mills, it is pouring out there. You're likely definitely using those windshield wipers with some lightning as well. And then this downpour that we have been watching in Caldwell County is finally beginning to weaken out. Do still have an active flood advisory for the western portion of the area near Globe. That is due to rainfall around 1 to 2 inches that have fallen. So excessive runoff as well as the potential for a rise in some of those streams and creeks will be a concern, but this is expiring pretty quickly as well. Zooming out, there's that stationary front up towards the north, and you'll notice that coverage right alongside that front. We'll do it all again for tomorrow as well. Now, each and every day, some sort of severe weather threat. Damaging winds will be the primary concern. But again, like I mentioned, the coverage is just very minimal. We could have one storm in the forecast, and that one storm could be severe with damaging winds upwards of 50 to 60 miles per hour. Some small-sized hail also possible as well. Wednesday, that threat coming later into the day. So futurecast, by the time we get towards this evening, still tracking a couple of downpours, fizzling out late tonight. Tuesday morning certainly starts off dry, but warm and muggy, just like what we've been doing over the past week or so. And then by the time we get towards the afternoon, you'll notice best coverage up in the mountains. Here comes Wednesday, especially right around lunchtime, getting more active, especially north of I-40. This is first going to hit the mountains. Doesn't really make it here into the greater Charlotte area between about 6 to around 9 o'clock, as when we'll start to see the first signs of a couple of thunderstorms. Again, damaging winds alongside these will be the primary threat. And we've got pockets of heavy rain that continue through Thursday morning. So the concern is if you're headed out maybe to work, allow yourself plenty of extra time, as this will be impacting That morning rush hour commute. Gusty winds also possible as well. That is why we want you to stay weather alert. Now, especially here in Charlotte, we do desperately need the rainfall. The rain amounts have certainly not been equal over the last week. Some locations have picked up 2 to 4 inches, while us here in Charlotte has been minimal at best. So the departure this month at the Charlotte Douglas Airport, about 1.25 inches, and the yearly departure, almost 8 inches at this point. So we will take any rainfall that we could get. The one thing that will not be arriving with these cooler temperatures, certainly the mugginess in the air. That is something that is still in full force and will not be going away anytime soon. Now, I want to get a quick check on the tropics. Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley will actually be joining me to discuss this more, but this is what it looks like. It's still hanging on to tropical depression status. We're expecting this to strengthen and start to organize as we go into tonight, early tomorrow morning, expected to strengthen into Tropical Storm Bertha, which would become our second named storm of the season, producing lots and lots of rainfall over towards the Florida Panhandle. But you could actually see that circulation a lot better, especially compared to about 24 hours ago. So more on that to come. In the meantime, heat and humidity certainly in full force. It's 7 o'clock, and many locations still having heat index values in the upper 90s to lower 100s. That should tell you everything that you need to know, especially going into today and tomorrow. It's going to be very similar. Right now, current heat index 102 in Rock Hill, feeling like 100 over towards Rockingham, and Cheraw checking in at 101. Evening forecast staying toasty. 9 o'clock, still have temperatures in the middle 80s and likely feeling like the 90s as well. And these overnights not providing much relief as well. We're going to be dropping into the middle to even upper 70s by the time we get towards the next couple of mornings. So 7-day forecast. Staying hot and humid tomorrow into Wednesday, and then here comes that cold front bringing us some relief with temperatures down into the 80s. More to come.
Weather Impact Live with Brad Panovich is sponsored by Moisture Lock, crawl space, basement, and foundation repair experts serving the Carolinas since 1988.
Tired of all this rain? Does your yard look like a swamp after it rains? Hi, I'm Greg Doggett with Moisture Lock, Charlotte's premier waterproofing and foundation repair company. The longer water sits, the softer soil will become. This can cause foundation issues. If you're having drainage issues, contact Moisture Lock. We'll get the water away from your home and out of your yard.
Moisture Lock, stabilize, enhance, protect.
All right, good evening, everyone. I am joined by Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley and our partners at WFMY and our wonderful weather intern, Rachel, who will also be joining the conversation as well. We've got a lot to talk about this week in terms of tropical weather, heat, humidity, and my favorite, much needed relief from the intense humidity that we have been all dealing with. So, Tim, how are you doing?
Yeah, good to be with you. I'm excited about the break from the heat, too. We've had 90 degrees here in Greensboro, Becca, 17 out of 20 days for July. That's pretty unusual for us. And, of course, we have 10 days left in the month. So hopeful to kind of skip that for a couple of days later on this week. Rachel, I'm sure you're ready to get rid of this heat as well.
Well, it's not much better back in Oklahoma, Tim, so I don't know if I'm really moving into a better environment. I think tomorrow their actual temperature is supposed to be 104, so it is not much cooler out there, and it's dry. So a dry heat, I know that everybody's like, oh, the humidity is worse, but I think the dry heat is worse. My skin gets dry, my nerves, my wit is like, I'm on my wit's end, and I don't like it, so I'm okay with this.
The thing about heat in Oklahoma and Texas is that it lingers into October and November, and it's just brutally hot. Unlike the Carolinas that actually see true transitions. And I was saying this earlier to our news team, but I saw Halloween decorations at Lowe's this weekend. Made me so excited, and I wish we could just fast forward because here in Charlotte, it's actually the third warmest July so far in terms of average temperatures. So really looking forward to this drop and, of course, intense heat, humidity. But in the meantime, it's in full force out there, and we're also tracking some strong and severe thunderstorms.
Yeah, I've got a bit of an active radar up here, so we'll take just a minute or two to give our Triad viewers a little glimpse at what's going on. And, the theme over the weekend, I'm sure it was the same in the Charlotte area, is some people get it, some people don't. That was certainly the case up here. But right now, today, we've seen more people getting in on the storm activity. We have one severe thunderstorm warning. This is for Rockingham County right now, and it extends up into southern Virginia as well. The main action is just near the town of Mayodan at the moment. It's possible we could have some of those downburst winds that we talk about sometimes. There's been a lot of that in the last couple of weeks, guys. And when you see these signatures on radar with kind of the diverging winds, that can sometimes be showing us that, there might be some of those higher winds that can down some trees, down some power lines as well. But if you're watching us from Greensboro, I know it's storming like crazy too. We have a lot of gusty winds as well earlier. Now we're getting some more rainfall, which is nice. And we have some lightning strikes too. This is all welcome. I mean, we don't want any problems, but we would love to see more rainfall. And just like the Charlotte area, looks like we'll have a couple of days of opportunities. Maybe you're missing out on it today, but maybe you'll get hit better on Wednesday or into Thursday morning. This is kind of the way this week looks to be going.
Yes, and the coverage has been fairly minimal at best, but when you have a radar and you have just one storm and that one storm is severe, it's still very impactful, and damaging winds has been the primary threat for us as well. We had one severe thunderstorm warning, and I was only tracking one of these storms just up towards Caldwell County that actually did produce a flood advisory for 1 to 2 inches of rain that has fallen. Thankfully, that is beginning to weaken out. Now, Iredell County getting certainly the blunt of it, but it's going to be this pattern going forward, especially tomorrow. Not the best coverage tomorrow, but as we get more widespread rain Wednesday night through Thursday morning, there is going to be the potential for some localized flooding with some slow-moving downpours, and I know both you and our stations are weather impact alert for it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the interesting thing about this would be maybe, we could have some of those gusty winds, of course. I'm looking at the radar. It almost looks like on Futurecast that a lot of those storms could pop up on the backside of the front, Becca. And so that might actually make it harder for them to be severe by nature, but it could make them more efficient rainmakers. So if anything, it is a good opportunity along a real cold front to get some real rainfall, and it's that same front that's going to bring us the break from the heat that we teased to a little bit before. Once you get on the backside of that thing, you could actually struggle to get up to 80 degrees for a couple of days.
And this is certainly not going to come with lower humidity and just we completely dry off like a traditional cold front. As it stalls down to the south,
No.
this is going to provide plenty of soakers each and every day. And looking at the rainfall forecast just over the next 5 days, in the purple, which is pretty rare to see in the Carolinas, we can see the potential for 3 to over 5 inches. So we're going to be watching. Again, not everyone's seeing the same amount of rain, but the potential for any sort of excessive runoff, a rise in some of the streams and creeks, but it's just not going to be for everyone, which is why we encourage people to stay weather alert. Know if you're in a flood-prone area and have your alerts turned on, even if you are, maybe you want to download that WFMY app, that WCNC app. You actually track where the showers and storms in real time, and we'll give you notifications if you are under a watch or a warning.
You got it. And I think it's interesting, and maybe Rachel can speak to this too. We talk about flooding a lot, and we're in a drought. We're in one of the worst droughts in 20 years. You can still have flooding even if you're in a bad drought, and especially because the ground is hard.
Yeah, I talked about it, I think last week whenever Alex was on, but the way you guys have your soil setup is very similar to Oklahoma, where especially out east you guys have red clay. And so where the heaviest rainfall is going to be, they already struggle with that runoff anyways, because red clay gets really dense and it really does not like to absorb water, especially when it's been dried out for a long time. So it will be interesting to see how the east handles that, especially with all of the heavy rain coming in.
That's certainly a good point, and we'll be watching for that, but more importantly, the cool down as well. A lot to talk about just in terms of across the country. Of course, the Canadian wildfires were a huge talker last week. There were actually some cities that had did briefly rank among the worst air quality in the world because of this smoke, including Detroit, Michigan. Wildfire smoke still in full force, not nearly as bad as what it was for last week, but certainly still some air quality issues out there as well.
Yeah, and not for us. We're not really included at the moment, which is nice to see. But gosh, if you have any friends, family who live up north or were traveling up north, or even if you just watched any television at all last week, you saw this. And this is the worst smoke that we've been dealing with out east in about 3 years. And for many of those cities, it was worse than the last time. So what I've got here, this is something we've been using a lot more now than we have in a couple of years. It's called a smoke, it's basically a smoke model here, which we're able to model where it is now and where it's going to go. And not to bury the lead, it doesn't look as bad as last week for anybody. It seems overall that it'll be less intense, more dispersed, and more confined to Canada. Maybe those fires aren't quite as active. I didn't actually check up on that, but I can tell you for sure, you're not going to notice it here in the Carolinas, and even most of the big cities up north, they're going to get a pretty nice break from this as well.
And last week, I'm going to shout out our news director, Sharif, because he was asking me if we were going to look like what Detroit, Michigan, and what Boston and New York had. We had live cameras everywhere. Yeah. He was like, when is Charlotte going to see that? I'm like, it's going to be a little bit more faint. So I think that's what people were kind of wondering, like, is it going to be as bad as we're seeing up towards the north and upper Midwest? And the answer is no. We had a very faint haze, if anything, here on the Charlotte Metro, and certainly some code oranges for some unhealthy air. But pretty stark images and harrowing and eerie out in the north, but glad that things seem to be improving as well.
For sure, but we will keep an eye on it every time we have northwest winds, probably the next couple weeks, maybe a couple months. I don't know how long they'll last, but it'll just be something to kind of keep an eye on, and we'll let you know.
That's right. In the meantime, tropics are becoming active. We are expecting and anticipated the potential for Tropical Storm Bertha to form either tonight or tomorrow morning, which would be the second tropical storm of the season so far. And here it is, still hanging on to a tropical depression 2 as of the 5 p.m. advisory. It's strengthening just a little bit, but it has very slow movement at the moment. Then over the past 24 to 48 hours, it's had very gradual acceleration, moving northwest at around 3 miles per hour. But what it is doing is still bringing some soakers, those outer rain bands impacting the panhandle of Florida. And eventually the track will be heading westward, where it is going to be producing lots of rainfall to those Gulf Coast states, Tim.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, we've been tracking this for a couple of days. At first, it was just in theory if something could try and form. Then we had that big cluster of storms back on Friday that moved off of Florida. And that's turned into this tropical depression. We'll see if it becomes Bertha or not. It is fighting off a little bit of what we would say dry air. It's also fighting off some harsh winds called wind shear, which is tearing it apart a little bit. But what's interesting to me, and as we look at this, a lot of the rainfall seems like it's on the southern edge of the storm, and it's in the northern Gulf. So most of that is rainfall over water and a little bit less so over land. So sometimes a tropical storm doesn't get a lot of attention, and then it puts down 20 inches of rain. I don't think this is one of those, but it is still, of course, something to track, especially for Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. So we'll keep an eye on it throughout the week. It looks to be a slow mover, right?
That's right. And in fact, just like what you had said, tropical storms often get underestimated. And I think back to Tropical Storm Chantal, because it was just a tropical storm, but produced a lot of heavy rainfall, especially in your neck of the woods as well. So it's these tropical storms that you might not think, oh, the winds aren't that strong, but it's more of the rainfall aspect as well. And the cone doesn't really show the whole scope of the storm as well. But yes, looking at that rainfall potential, it looks like much of the heaviest is going to be off in the water, which is going to be good news. Certainly an eye to keep on. And we're going to also be watching over towards Texas, because they certainly don't need any more rainfall after the week that they've had.
And I know our intern, Rachel, you were doing some research on the old time Bertha, right? 30 years ago, this month actually, in North Carolina, we had another Bertha, and it was a pretty decent hurricane, in fact, a bad one for our coastal areas. And kind of neat to see these radar and satellite loops from 1996, which was a pretty busy time in Carolina hurricane history.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys might be a little disappointed to learn that 1996 was a little bit before I was born, so I did not know about
You didn't live through it.
Bertha.
Okay.
Yes.
It was nice having you on the show.
I was born in 97, so I was not born yet either.
But
Okay, I'll take it from here.
I do think it is kind of funny, though, whenever you bring up events like this, Tim, especially with you and Brad, you guys are kind of like walking encyclopedias. You guys always text something, you're like, oh, this is a history that we're seeing today, and it's always a very random fact. So I admire that you guys can kind of just remember those dates, or like a day of weather. But yeah, so 1996, we had Hurricane Bertha come through the Carolinas. It was a Category 3. I believe the maximum winds were 105 miles per hour before it made landfall. But we actually do have a little bit more history with Bertha. This is not the first time that was not the first time and last time that Bertha has made landfall in the Carolinas. It actually ties with one other names for the most amount of landfalls in the Carolinas, and that would be Arthur. So Arthur and Bertha are both names that we're using this year. You know that the names start to cycle every 6 years as long as they're not retired, and so it looks like this year is typically the year that we get those named storms to make landfall.
Very cool.
And I got this question from my... Yeah, go ahead.
My
news director was asking me earlier. She said, why are we reusing names, or what? I remember Bertha. Why are we here again? And the reason is that there are thresholds for whether you retire a name or not. That's usually reserved for the kind of the worst of the worst storms, or at least ones that are generational. This was a decently bad hurricane, but it didn't affect the whole state. There were no impacts in Greensboro or Charlotte, for example. But if you're in Wrightsville Beach, if you're in Topsail Island, I guess, it was a decently bad hurricane. But, Cat 1 and 2 hurricanes down there, they do happen, and it wasn't super deadly. It didn't cause those generational impacts like Floyd, like Fran. Busy in the 90s, Bertha kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, and the World Meteorological Organization, they opted to keep it going rather than retiring it. But, yeah, for the record, I was 9 years old for that one. I don't remember it, but we got the record books to show it as well. I should have remembered Bertha from 2020, Rachel, and the scary thing to me is I don't remember that one at all, and I was sitting right here, so I don't know what I was doing.
Like I said earlier, I think there were maybe some more important events going on in 2020 that maybe our memory was a little clouded.
2020 was a very active year, and when you don't remember a storm, maybe that's a good thing.
Right,
so it didn't do that much damage, so this could be good.
I was actually working from home doing weather in my bedroom at that time of back in COVID year.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
It's a different time. Well, we'll see what Bertha manages to do if it is able to strengthen. So we'll, of course, have more updates on that this time tomorrow. This was an interesting stat that our morning meteorologist, Chris Mulcahy, put together, but we're right on average for this time of year. Tropical climatology, typically around July 17th is the average timing of our second named storm. If it does form today, July 20th, it'll be right on par. It was the same with our first named storm as well. Average timing right around June 20th, came around June 17th. So as a reminder, hurricane season doesn't really peak until September. So we've got lots more of these talks and walks back into history coming up more as we go further in, of course, in summer and fall as well.
Sounds good. Hey, I'm hearing we have some really great video. I actually haven't seen this, but New York had some pretty terrific flooding over the weekend, guys. Is this like Brooklyn or Queens or something? It seems like this is something that happens every time they get a bad thunderstorm.
Yeah, this is, I don't believe this is the video of Manhattan, but yes, in basically every neighborhood of New York City saw this type of flooding. It actually happens pretty frequently because of the way that New York City is built. And in the last 100 years, the sea levels on the coast of New York City have actually risen a foot. So they've become a lot more flood prone in the last 100 years, which is really interesting. But it makes you think, especially in Manhattan, things like their subways and stuff like that, definitely being affected by these types of floods.
And I see a lot of videos of people in the subway with all of this heavy rainfall and that asphalt and concrete, creating just a flash flood nightmare with any intense thunderstorm, like Rachel mentioned, to come over towards the area. So a really scary scene, almost looks swampy. A couple of people, looks like they're walking through the floodwaters, which is never recommended, by the way, because you don't actually know what's in the waters. Could be anything. It could be debris, could be critters. You don't know what's in the water, especially in New York City, might I add. Critters as in rodents. So just be careful out there. But yes, urban flooding in upstate North Carolina is always a concern. And of course, you've got satellite radar of New York.
Looks like this was back on Saturday. They had a big storm risk up there, and maybe it was just some heavy storms that were slow movers, and there you go. I know they had canceled baseball games and didn't affect the World Cup at all. That went off without a hitch yesterday, as you saw. But waist deep water, that's no fun. So we're glad they're okay, and we'll be looking at our impacts the next couple of days and keeping you posted on if we have any flooding around here, especially Wednesday night into Thursday morning with those slow movers.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for joining, and we will be back here same time tomorrow.